Oh, all right. Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Yanuck. This is Catalyst for Healing. Today we're accompanied by Maria Lloyd, our wonderful therapist, as well as Dr. Richter, who runs and operates Renew Ketamine Infusion out in Seal Beach. Today we're going to be talking about a really interesting subject, and that is art therapy, specifically as it pertains to those with depression and anxiety and those types of mood disorders, and also how it can be used concurrently with ketamine inductions and ketamine therapy. It's a topic maybe Dr. Richter and I aren't as familiar with, but Maria Lloyd is really familiar with it and has done a lot of training in it. And so we're more going to be asking you a lot of questions. So Maria, maybe introduce what it is and how it can be used.
Okay. Well, one of the things we always encourage people after their ketamine treatments is to utilize that 48 or 72 hours of neuroplasticity increase. And so often that can be done with art, music, nature, any type of expression becomes a little bit more enhanced during that neuroplastic increase time. And so I am not an artist in any way. I've never had any experience with it. I'm not good at it, but I've been leaning into painting a little bit after my treatments. And I ended up signing up for this 8-hour somatic workshop, art workshop. And I thought it would be nice to share with people because I think there's a lot of power in expressing emotion through art. And so I want to kind of demystify it for people that might say, oh, I'm not an artist. I don't want to do that. I think there's still ways you can engage that you can get a lot out of it. So I basically would love to share with you about the workshop that I did. It had an emphasis on somatic in terms of really getting you in touch with what was happening in your body and having that lead your decisions around what colors to use, what pictures to draw. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of interesting pieces that came from that too. So it kind of ties in some of the somatic work.
Yeah, and that's amazing. Actually, I when I went through the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy course, that was something that we touched upon, and I actually have patients or clients really just kind of when that neuroplastic window sets in, how do you express your emotions? And a lot of the times I've had the discussion with them, well, you can express yourself through maybe reading, maybe listening to music. And those are more or less just passive observer kind of points. But expressing yourself through art, I feel like a lot of people might have some trepidation with that because, you know, one of those things is, am I doing things right? You're so, you know, aware of your own feelings in a way that, what would you recommend people when it comes to trepidation to even start with anything like that? Because they might be hesitant to feel like, well, I'm just not going to be good at it, right? And that sets in with the etymology of being perhaps depressed and questioning everything you're doing.
Mm.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because at the end of the day, like, one of the hallmarks of all psychedelics is like the ineffable nature of it. And it's really hard to put to words what it is that you're feeling and experiencing. And art kind of is a hack to, okay, well, you don't have to put to words, just like express it, right? Whatever it is that you are feeling, try and get it out. And so maybe it gives a different vocabulary to a feeling that you're having. So maybe let's get kind of to dovetail off Dave's thing. How do you walk us through, how do you get started with this? Someone like me, who really has no background in terms of painting, drawing, how would you recommend someone start this process?
Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is just walk through what I had learned through that art workshop. It's very easy I would say to get started might be to use, just get some basic acrylic paints and canvases. They're very affordable. So we used, this was the canvas we used, and I'm going to show you because now you can see my art is not good, but there were so many layers to it that I want to explain because the way that it tapped into my emotion throughout the process was just a really beautiful journey for me throughout the day. So she started with picking a color. So underneath this, there was layers and layers of stuff. So with the canvas, what's cool about it is you can always paint over it. And so there's 5 different layers underneath this picture right here. And the very first thing she did, I mean, I could see if I can find it on my phone, was like sit with a color that would represent courage for you. And she wanted to start out because a lot of us there had never painted in their life. I had done a little bit of just working with paints on my own, but I by no means haven't any experience. So anyway, I picked, I was just drawn to the color green. She just said, like, go to the color that you're most drawn to. And then sorry, it's having trouble loading here. So basically she had us draw this big swipe. I'm going to see if I can highlight it a little bit because it's kind of fun to see the process. So she just said, like, I don't know if you can see it. Like, sure. Draw a big symbol, a swipe of courage. And that was just kind of us having the courage to do the project. And then we like sprayed water on it and had it kind of drip down. Mm-hmm. And then she said, this was love and compassion. She said, pick a color that kind of would represent love and compassion, and then just draw some shapes and symbols that would help you start the day with, expressing love and compassion for yourself, for the process. So that was kind of how I got led into it. And then the whole purpose of the art project was to represent your past and your present and your future. And so her first question was, think of a symbol that represents your past. And as I've shared on this experience, I've had a lot of depression in my past. I mean, probably 25 years was pretty severely clinically depressed. So I drew over that a big dark cloud to represent my past. And the next step of that was to try to transmute it. So we kind of sprayed it and tried to have the colors come down a little bit, try to transmute it into something a little softer and gentler. And then she wanted to get us a little bit more playful. And so we did finger painting and put all these dots on it, right over the past, to kind of remind us and get us in touch with our inner child. So this was just really, I don't know, to this point, I was just having fun with it. I was enjoying just kind of sitting with, how do I want to bring in different colors to represent, the past. And then I started layering over it, but basically we sat with, like, what are the feelings in the present? And so I know one of the things I've shared recently was my ketamine infusion and going through my divorce. And this is my first time living alone since I was married, and so there was a lot of fear and anxiety, and that was just so palpable about being alone and what that feeling is like, and leaning into that. And so I just used a bunch of different colors, and that's to represent the aloneness. I mean, you can kind of see it on here, but maybe also
explain a little bit what you're seeing, just for the podcast listeners.
Oh yeah, good point. Okay. So the cloud, I ended up turning it around and putting it on the bottom. And so for me, it was like the colors were just representing a lot of the fear, anxiety, kind of stress of the present moment, and not being sure how I was going to get to. Good, we have a cat joining us today.
Sorry, we have a fourth guest. Yes. We have one cat.
So cute.
He's eager to learn.
So not being sure. So anyway, we just sat there and embraced, like, whatever feelings were coming up in that present moment. And so the next thing that we drew was what is a symbol that represents your future? And so for me, it was immediately came to mind was sunlight, brightness, sunshine, because I literally have felt more and more joy in my life. As we talked about through the process of my treatments, but also some other decisions that I've made in my life. So anyway, that was going to overtake the present and the past. And as you can see, the cloud's still in the background because that is my history, but it's much softer here. And the light and the brightness is kind of taking over at this point. And so then she asked us to draw a picture, which I like, yeah, mine is ridiculous, but like, it was like for me, it was like a childlike part of me coming back out and like dancing and having fun. And so that represented that in the corner. But I guess the whole experience itself, it was like, I mean, again, this took 8 hours, so we did it really, really slowly.
Mhm.
But it was like an opportunity to really sit with each emotion that I was experiencing and putting it out onto the canvas and expressing it. And then we were in a group and we would share our process. But by the end of the day, it was like the future was palpable and I could feel it and I was excited about it. And that kind of anxiety of the present had somehow gotten shifted in my body. And so her whole thing was take this with you and put it up somewhere so that you can look at it and remind yourself of your past and where you're at in the present and the future that you want to keep moving towards. And so it's been like a powerful grounding tool that I'm using now just to remind myself of what I'm trying to create, for my future.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, like, to be honest, and I don't mean this in a judgmental way, it just seems very simple and obvious, right?
Totally.
And I think it's funny how we've kind of come full circle in the medical space where, like, as we just tend to overcomplicate a lot of things. And of course, some things are just genuinely really complicated, but really you're getting back down to like a childlike state of being where you're just present and you're giving yourself the space. Of course, 8 hours is probably unrealistic for a lot of people, but even just the intentionality of a couple minutes, in close proximity to an infusion, or
right.
if you're not doing infusions, just, 5-10 minutes a day where you're just being present, doing anything. Art is really a tool to help you just kind of be internal and be mindful, but really the product that you create is almost irrelevant, right? It's just allowing you to just be here inside. And I think when we talk with our patients in the clinic, they always are asking us what to do afterwards. And I think for me, what I tend to say is just try to do something that lets you be present. Get rid of all the noise, right? Like nothing, not auditory noise, but just like everything that's going on in the world. Give yourself the opportunity to do something like that, right? Sit under a tree, go for a walk, paint, do music, things like that. And this is a really cool example of that. This type of class, I'm curious, so the phrase like somatic, I mean, that's a bit of a buzzword in our space, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard that. How does somatic art therapy relate to somatic psychotherapy? Does it seem along the same lines? Is it focusing on the same things?
Yes. So somatic therapy is really, it's on the rise right now. And I totally understand why. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I'm sure you guys have read it or heard about it, but the more that I work with clients and their trauma, it's all stored in their body. And when people can access their body for information, it gives them so much more than their mind in terms of what's happening. Like I will have clients, not be able to express what they're feeling, but I can ask them, where do they feel it in their body? They feel it in their stomach, in their gut. And then I can say, what's a memory? What's your earliest memory of feeling that way? And it can track them right back to the feeling in their gut when this happened at 8 years old. Like, it's pretty phenomenal how much the body stores our traumas and then also continues to get activated in the present. And so the goal to become a healthy human is to be embodied, which is basically meaning living in the body, which most people are extremely dissociated from their emotions, their bodies. I mean, in terms of our society, especially in the US, doesn't emphasize a lot of practices, but they're bringing a lot in. Like, yoga is something that can really help you get in touch with your body. And there's a lot of other somatic practices that can benefit that. But that's a goal for me with clients, is to help them access what they're feeling in their bodies, because there's so much information there. And I think when they're guided by the body, like even with this experience with the art, it's bringing in even more than if I was just utilizing my mind to think about, oh, what's a pretty color? But I'm using my body to go, okay, what is my body drawn to? I'm going to have a deeper expression. Does that make sense? Or did that explain? Okay.
No, definitely. Yeah. I feel like I believe like we run into this all the time. I feel like, especially in our field, what you just said, the dissociation is one of the core protective mechanisms in order to function. And so in that sense, little by little, allowing yourself to be more and more as if complete within your whole self is essentially what we aim more or less with the therapy that we provide, instead of simply just compartmentalizing and shielding from certain things that are difficult to cognitively break through or explain or process. So I love this idea, actually. So what I like is that about the therapy and that's what I was segueing from before, is I feel like a lot of clients might have, the trepidation when it comes to, I need to make something, right? In quite the opposite. You're simply just allowing yourself to process through expression. And I like what you said, and I like that pointed out maybe for our patients, is express yourself initially maybe through color. Forget shapes. Don't try to make it too particular or specific. I actually love that you went from, in general, representation of your own being through colors from the past, present, to the future, and how that changes. And you can see the clear difference, if there is or if there isn't. You're expressing yourself. You're allowing yourself to feel a color in a way you might never allow yourself to feel, because you're expressing yourself through the colors. So I think that's a fantastic idea, especially for people that are maybe a little worried as though, what will come out of this? Is this going to be, completely bizarre? Or don't focus on that. Allow yourself to just express your emotion through color, which is fantastic. And that's something very creative, I feel like.
Go ahead, sorry.
No. Do you feel like, and that was actually just my question to you, do you feel like when you look at the picture, what do you feel like is more representative, the colors or the shapes, or is it all in one? Or what do you feel like when you look at it? What speaks to you the most, you feel?
I think, it's what it represents. I mean, definitely the colors, like you said, are huge, because mine went from like black cloud to like bright light. And I guess the symbols were also important. So, I mean, I think, I like what you said, Justin. I like, if people can take their minds off the finished product and just it doesn't matter. It's like just engaging, like literally just engaging with paint and putting it on a canvas. There's something extremely therapeutic about just that process. And expressing yourself in a different way, in a new way. And even if it's just trying out the different colors and seeing, figuring out what your favorite color expression is. I mean, keeping it really simple, I think, is important.
Yeah. I think we live in an era where if our time is not occupied by being a productive member of society, or I don't know, maybe exercise, like something, you know, like that's like, oh, good for our like physical health, we think of it as a waste of time. And so a lot of these things that are really more about our mental health, which of course has physical consequences, I think it's, and I can speak for myself on this, like I sometimes think of it as like selfish. And so when I'm apportioning my time throughout the day, I'll oftentimes like not do those things because I'm like, just like, I don't have time for that. I need to clean the backyard. I need to go exercise. I need to, you know, write the 500 emails I have to do, whatever it is. And you don't have time because it seems like a waste. Right. And we've talked about this a lot before, but like if the amount of effort and priority people make to their physical health, if they just devoted a couple percentage points to their mental health, I wonder how much different our society as a whole would be. And I think this is just like there's all sorts of different types of physical exercise, you know, in terms of all the different classes you can do. Like this is just one type of class, right? And it might not be for everyone, but like Orange Theory is not for everyone. Soul Cycle is not for everyone, but it's like something that works. And I think this is something that allows you to tap into that flow state, that mindfulness, being present for a couple minutes a day, couple hours if you have the luxury of it. And then you go about with the other parts of your life. And it shouldn't matter. Like when you're done with it, move on and you go to the next thing. And the idea, I think, I get that's really it. That's kind of.
But I think you're right. It's like that. I mean, I don't know the brain parts of this. You guys might know as doctors, but it's like, I mean, also in our schools, we took out music, we took out, you know what I mean? Like all the creativity was like removed and we've got all this like heavy learning and our brains need it. I mean, I know people that, you know, it may not be like painting, but they decoupage something or they do knitting or like any type of creative expression is so healthy for the brain because it's actually puts the brain in kind of a meditative state. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm guessing. Because it's super relaxing and it's calming.
Like Dr. Richter is like a big rock climber, right? And like some of the, I mean, I'm sure you can speak to it, but I'm like some of your hardest climbs, I bet when you finish, you're like, your mind was just empty. Yeah.
Right. And so this is one thing that I think is an underlying thread. What you guys have pointed out now so perfectly is you're focusing on a process, not the product, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We live Western society lives. It's a goal-oriented society, right? If you don't have a product to show for it, then what is it? The process doesn't matter. And we're starting to realize that the goal might be secondary to the process, right? And it's very difficult to shift that mindset, right? And so I would definitely segue on what you were saying. The process alone of just finding what actually allows you to express allows you to tap into what might be you and who you might be, regardless of the goal or a product, right? And so, yes, climbing, for example, like a lot of other things, and that's where I would encourage people to find or keep looking for what might be the most constructive way of expressing themselves, whether it's whatever we've listed already. And when it comes to climbing, what I love about it, it's a love-hate relationship with some of these activities is you might never actually accomplish the climb you're trying, and it may be months or years, but the process alone is actually in the end almost more important than accomplishing the goal if you can allow yourself to express yourself through it. And I think that's what's so important to impart on people is allowing themselves to get, you know, and that's a, you know, catchphrase, get in touch with their emotions, really just simply allowing themselves to express who they are through something that might be more and more constructive in their future. Being the process of expressing themselves, whether it's through physical activity, through painting, play. We've already listed all that. So I would say it shifts the orientation of the mind to actually engage and express in the process, to start delving into why am I actually doing this? Who am I? And that I think is so important. And it's the basis of our education in a way, right? We do go through learning and education to accomplish something, whether it's a particular knowledge base or a grade, but ultimately it shouldn't probably be the only goal as we understand it in education. Right? You should try to see what might be your way of expressing yourself to what type of education and what subjects and all of this. So Goes the same
Yeah.
with any activity that we express ourselves through, no matter what the product is or whatever the goal might be.
One other thought is, I mean, talk about being in the present moment, which is very difficult for people. But these kind of activities, they require you to be fully in the present moment. And that's another beautiful thing is, you know, even being in nature, but like when you're doing art or something creative, or you're doing rock climbing, you're required to fully be in the present moment. And that's something super important to learn coming out of the ketamine treatments, because a lot of times depressed people are more focused on the past, anxious people are more focused on the future. Both of them rarely live in the present. It's very, very difficult to be in the present.
So true, yeah.
100% agree.
That's so
with that.
true.
Yes.
It's a really good point.
Yes.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like the beauty of, if we're going to just talk a little bit about like ketamine, the beauty of it is it allows you this opportunity to maybe think about things in a different way, but it's also a really potent habit builder. And so it allows you to possibly start and form new habits. And I encourage patients who maybe are resistant to this type of thing to sometimes almost pretend to like play a character, like play the person that they want to be, just like pretend to be that person. Give yourself like, because like a lot of times there's so much self-judgment and negative ruminations. Like, okay, you're going to, let's just say, assume you're going to still have that for a bit. Just pretend, like pretend to be that person that gets out the, you know, the paint and paints for, 20, 30 minutes, and just like go through the motions and see if you keep putting yourself in that situation, if all of a sudden it starts to feel more natural and less like you're acting and more like you're being who you are. And so, yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, like you absolutely, I think what you're describing could be useful for everyone, whether you have depression, whether you have anxiety, whether you're doing a ketamine induction, I think it could be useful for everyone. Do you think this is something that like what's like the bare minimum of what you need to get started with something like this?
Oh, to get started with art. Yeah, I mean, you could draw with a pencil. I mean, there's so many ways to express. But like I said, I mean, if you wanted to play with, I mean, you could do watercolor is really easy, or you could just get some acrylic paints. And
actually, we had a patient in our clinic once that brought in clay, which I thought was kind of cool.
Clay is amazing.
Like I think, like the textural thing, like the feeling in their hands was grounding. But then I just remember that afterwards they were like molding it into things. And so like that's, again, super user friendly.
Well, and what's interesting is I used to do a lot of play therapy with working with children. And those, I mean, that's what we would use to work with children. Art, clay, sand trays. I mean, because while they're playing and expressing through those modalities, they're getting feelings out and they're getting more in touch with who they are. So it's also getting us in touch with our inner child.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to advertise anything else, but I've had this with the clients actually, where I've talked to them about it when they were going back into their childhood and starting to play with just simple Lego pieces, different colors, different building blocks. And the simpler, the better. And simply just expressing yourself in a three-dimensional structure of whatever comes out of it, right? It is something very physical, very palpable. It's something that you can really relate to in a space, and people can express themselves incredibly through something like that as well. So it's the options are endless. And
they are endless.
Combining the idea of, because the one thing we all know that, with the ketamine, you just might be primed finally to allow yourself to feel, right? And feel instead of simply trying to just explain, ruminate, or mentalize everything that you are feeling. You're allowing yourself to perhaps just sit with the feeling. And that silent expression, I think, there's an incredible power with that when it comes to the things that we know we can sense, ears, music, or sounds, eyes. That's one of our greatest senses since we are born, colors, shapes, things like that. So I really feel like it is an incredible exercise. I actually recommend it to all of my patients. Whatever they used to do or whatever they haven't tried, I try to encourage them to just allow themselves to express. Whether it's abstract or not, it doesn't matter. It's something constructive, something that allows them to express in a way that they might have not felt like they could before. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anything to add, Maria? You feel like?
No, I think, yeah, it was great. I had one other thought. They have so many of those coloring books, like even something like that. I mean, those are like adult coloring books can be really fun. So like you said, the options are endless.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm having so many thoughts on this right now, but I think that could be a totally separate podcast. For now, I think we can leave it. We can leave it at this. Maria, this is a really interesting topic. Thanks for going through that class. Thanks for sharing that story with us. I think this can be really useful for a lot of people. I think a lot of people think of this as really like I think people judge art therapy a certain way, maybe myself included at times, to be honest. And I think this just kind of opens people up to like how powerful it can be, how simple it is. And I think it's just worth trying. See if it's for you. And if it's not, try something else.
Yeah. And perhaps we can even get away from the verbology of art. You're not creating art. You're just expressing yourself through things like
I love that.
And paints. Right?
Yeah.
Don't think about it as art. Don't worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We will see y'all next time. Bye.
Bye.